I greatly appreciate being here. Um, Hi, everyone. Again, my name is Lorenzo Hill. I'm the founder of Cooling Water Community Farms. And Cooling Water Community Farms, if you know the song of it, it basically washes you clean. And the I've started community farms because of the social capital. We farm by social capital, and social capital is a idea of individuals coming together in a group for a specific purpose, and they have the resources and everything to do it. And so I begin to think about, okay, what can we do with this situation that's going on right now with the food deserts and all these great things. What can I do? And so as I was beginning to learn about quail and learning about all this biosecurity stuff, I began to work with Lisa and Food Well Alliance, and they began to show me things that I could not put into it. And so I began to create these biosecurity kits. And so I created biosecurity kits for individuals that have backyard flocks, egg farms, and that are just have chickens for pets and not doing anything with them, because uh, uh, it's very easy to pick up a virus and not know it. So I'm so I so in order to get get the farmers and gardeners food to our community, we will need proper biosecurity, because we cannot eat food and it be filled with viruses and vectors. And so in order to get our food out to the community, in order to get the community around us to be able to eat safe food, we have to have proper biosecurity measures and materials and resources and steps to be put in place. And so in order to move forward, and if you want to serve your community, have proper biosecurity steps. And if you need any of these kits, if you're looking for a kit, or if you're looking to learn a little bit more about Cooling Water Community Farms, the website is cwcfarms.org, and my email address is lhill@cwcfarms.org, and we can talk a little bit more
You can
about
drop
this.
that in the chat box
Yes,
too,
yes,
Lorenzo.
indeed.
Um, so
Uh,
that way everybody can just grab it and didn't have to try to write that down. But that's okay.
and Lisa, that's about it. But thank you so very much for this opportunity. I greatly appreciate you.
Sure. And so if anybody who is on this presentation is interested in some of those biosecurity kits, Lorenzo, I don't know if you want to hold up a few of the items that are in there.
Sure.
Everybody can kind of see what you get.
Well, so with this, you get a container with the top. You also get a USDA Defend Your Flock checklist pamphlet. You get um, a QR code of all the USDA Defend the Flock um, um, uh, websites. You get the USA Defend the Flock website. You get the NPIP, which is the National Poultry Improvement Plan. That's where you get you have your birds tested, and you have a little bit more things here with some YouTube videos and shows about some people that get hurt. Some non-porous boots, some gloves, and you get biosecurity. You get two biosecurity suits, and you get placards. You get placards on the 14 principles of biosecurity. You get a placard on how avian influenza can be contracted and defended, defended against. And I also have a avian influenza poster and for
A jug of Lysol.
yes, and a jug of Lysol. And so with that, that is all free. But if you want to donate, you can. It's but I want to make sure that you backyard farmers have the equipment that you need so you can thrive and your birds can thrive and your community can thrive. That's important. And so
Okay,
once we get everything settled with biosecurity, we're good to go. We can get food
awesome.
out to our people.
Awesome. Okay, so now go ahead, Lorenzo, and put your contact information in the chat box, and we are going to roll on to Dr. Ritz, who is now going to screen share and start his presentation. And then hopefully, if we got a little bit of time left over, there'll be some time for some Q&A. So take it away.
Okay, well, thank you. Let me make sure it's working here. And
I'm seeing the presenter view. I'll have to swap it again.
there we go. How about that?
Still the presenter view. Try swap. Yeah, there we go. Okay, perfect.
Okay, great. All right. Well, thank you, Lisa, again for putting this program together, and appreciate the opportunity to speak again to the farmers and communities that you have there. And today we'll talk about, we're going to talk a little bit more about biosecurity, as Lorenzo has kind of introduced here, but we'll first talk about breeds and breed selection on small flock birds. And just a little, as we get going in here, to get kind of give a little bit of a history. You know, we domesticated chickens. It's been estimated about 8,000 years ago that chickens were taken from the wild and then domesticated and used for human use. And the picture that you see there, that rooster is called a red jungle fowl. And that is essentially the ancestral bloodline of our modern chickens. And those animals, those birds are still alive and well in Southeast Asia, but they are considered to be the primary ancestor of what we have today in our modern bird types, our modern chickens. Now, of the chickens, of course, that are available to us, we have those that have been bred to essentially be egg layers, small-bodied, not a lot of meat on them, but they lay a lot of eggs. We then have our meat birds, and then we have what we call a dual-purpose bird, and they typically lay a good amount of eggs, but they also have some meat quality to them if we so desire to do that. And then, of course, we do have ornamentals and bantams, or essentially the mini chickens, and they are all available for various reasons and purposes that people use. Now, we can divide all the chickens that are available to us, and there's over 300 or more breeds of types of chickens that are available. But we can first separate them out by class. And these are standards or standard breeds that were developed within a geographic region as we domesticated these birds. And so if the red jungle fowl there in Southeast Asia, as humans, as we evolved essentially, and we expanded our reach across the globe, the ancient mariners and explorers, when they found chickens, they started bringing them back. And so we consider those birds there to be the Asiatic breed. And as they progress through into the Mediterranean, on into Europe, England, and then into the United States, or into North America, we have developed these different classes of birds, essentially based on geography. And so those are available to us. Now, back in the late 1800s, the American Poultry Association was established, and they put together what they call the standard of perfection, which means then that essentially what they're trying to do is to standardize a bird. There was a lot of interest in showing and breeding and exhibiting different types of poultry. And so the Poultry Association put together this standard so that if they went to a show in Iowa, a Rhode Island red would look like it had met the standard. And if they went to Georgia to do a show and people were showing Rhode Island reds, they would look the same. They would have that same standard. And so the idea was to make sure that these breeds were consistent essentially across the world, depending on where you got these breeds. And a lot of these standards are based on head and body characteristics, the plumage, including the color and pattern quality and that kind of thing, and then the carriage, the posture that they have. And so again, the idea was that if I was showing you a Rhode Island red hen or a white leghorn hen, I could show you one here in Georgia and one in Iowa and California, and they would look the same because they adhered to the same standard. Same with an Orpington or a Plymouth Rock, and go on down the road, a Wells Summer or New Hampshire. The idea is that they would be the same no matter wherever you went. So then underneath our class of birds, we have the breeds. And so these are birds that have a common origin, that within those different classes, but then they also have common body shape, size, tend to have a common skin or scale color. And so the example I'm showing you down here is some English breeds where you have the Orpington, the speckled Sussex, the Cornish black Australorp. They are all of the same class of bird. They're just different breeds within that English class. And these breeds, again, were developed for consistent appearance, performance. They came from the same foundation bloodlines, essentially, and they developed through isolation and uniformity standards, and sometimes even in the environment or the reason that they were developed. For example, the egg-laying breeds. That was the purpose at the time. We weren't really eating a lot of chicken way back when. And so in the early 13 and 1400s, they were looking for egg production. So that's what was bred for example, in the Mediterranean breeds. So here we have our main classes: our American, English, Continental, or European, Mediterranean, and Asiatic. We have a few other oddball ones that really don't fall under they kind of are a class and a breed unto themselves. For example, some of the French breeds, the French went into their own class, and same with the Germans and things such as that. But the main breeds that we have are the 5 that are shown there on the right. And so some of the popular birds in the American class are the Delaware, the Plymouth Rock, the Wyandotte, the New Hampshire, and the Rhode Island red. And often what you can tell by the name of the bird, where, at least in the United States, where it was developed. The Wyandotte is a bird, American breed that was developed in New York in the late 1800s. But these are probably the most popular of the American breeds that we have. The English breeds, again, from which really the American breeds were developed. We have the Dorking, the Orpington, the Australorp, the Sussex, both the Columbian and then the speckled color pattern, and the red cap. The Australorp is actually an Australian. It was developed in Australia, but of course it's a part of the British Empire, and so it's part of the English breeds. But the Australorp actually holds the world record for a number of eggs laid in a year. And somewhere somebody had a hen that laid an egg every day for an entire year, and that's the current world record that we have for egg laying. Also within that English breed are the Cornish, and these are showing the partridge plumage and then the white plumage. But it's the Cornish cross taking some of that Cornish bloodline and then some of the Plymouth Rock bloodline, and that's where we have our modern meat bird, how that was developed over the years using those types of bloodline crosses that we have. Continental and Europeans, some of the breeds that are pretty common are the Polish. This is an example of a silver pencil Polish. The Fleck is one of those French breeds. The Brakel is from Belgium. The Spitzhaben is a Swiss breed, and then the Welsummer is a very popular Dutch breed. They lay kind of a very dark brown egg that's popular with backyard flock folks. Mediterranean breeds. These tend to be our egg-laying stock. So we have the Sicilian, that's called the Sicilian Buttercup. The Buttercup is that comb type that they have there, kind of the two-bladed comb. The White Leghorn, which is the base bloodline of our commercial white egg-laying industry that we have. The Blue Andalusian and White-faced Spanish are both Spanish breeds. And so, again, those are some of the popular heritage type that we have from the continental breeds. And then the Asiatic, kind of going again back toward the ancestral bloodline, we have the Brahma, the Cochin, and the Langshan are an example. Now, what you'll notice on these breeds is they have feathers on their shanks or on their toes. And so if you end up with chicks or hens that you're not sure really what they are, but they have feathers on their toes and legs, you'll know at least they have some Asiatic breed class of bird bloodline within them, because they have those feathers on the shanks and the toes. Some of the historical breeds, the Old English Game, the Sicilian, as I mentioned there, the Dorking and the Leghorn, those are actually Roman influence. They were the Dorking and these are to English, but then the Leghorn and the Sicilian from the Mediterranean area actually can be attributed to Roman expansion way back when. And this one on the bottom, the Egyptian Fayumi, is if you look at hieroglyphs of ancient Egypt, you'll see this very chicken depicted in ancient hieroglyphs. And so that breed has been around for a very, very long time. Some unique breeds that people have developed. The Phoenix over here is a long-tailed Japanese breed, part of the Asiatic class. The Silky, a Chinese breed. This black one here is called the Ayam Cemani. It's from Indonesia and very heavily pigmented, and it's become pretty popular in the last 5 to 10 years. They tend to be kind of expensive, but they're kind of a popular bird for sure. And this one down here is the Araucana, which is really kind of the original blue-green eggshell colored breed. They and other hybrids have been developed through using some of that Araucana bloodline. Just a few others. Here's another Anagadora is another long-tailed bird. This is the Dong Tao. It's a Vietnamese breed, and this leg condition that's not an illness, or that's actually the look that they're looking for, is these heavily heavy-legged, heavy-footed chickens. And then the smallest of all the chickens is the Surama, and this is showing these are both adult males and very small. Certainly they're just for ornamental or for show birds, but they have some classic chicken characteristics that people enjoy having. And we also have the Frizzle, and the Frizzle is actually it's not a breed, it's a condition. And feathers typically will lay flat, but this is a genetic condition where the feathers curl upward. And it's not it's not a performance issue, it's an appearance issue really. And so because it's kind of a unique characteristic that actually can be expressed in any of the breeds, and it can be manipulated further to get more. So the example here is a buff Polish, and then a frizzled buff Polish there that you have. And so that's kind of another unique thing. Now, back to our breed. Within that breed, the breeds, then we can have what we call the variety. And this is particularly when we talk about plume color or plumage pattern. This is really where it comes into play. And so an example would be then is let's start with this. We'll look at the Wyandotte varieties that we have. So the Wyandottes, again, they're the breed that was established in or developed in New York. But within that breed, we have these different varieties. So this is a silver laced Wyandotte, silver penciled, and that all has to do with the coloration pattern on the feathers. Golden laced Wyandotte, a buff laced, a partridge, the Colombian, which looks very similar to like the speckled Sussex. We have a barred, and we have a black laced, red, blue, or a blue laced red. And one of the most recent is a chocolate partridge. And what beautiful coloration these birds have. And yes, you can still get a black or a buff or white if you want, but I mean, if you can get a chocolate one, I would go with chocolate anytime. All right. So class, breed, variety, and now under variety, we have what we call strain. And strain, through genetic traits and crossbreeding, is where within closed flocks is where we have developed the commercial industries that we have today, the commercial egg industries, commercial meat industries, because the idea is commercially, if we have a flock of chickens and they produce let's say a 3.5 pound carcass, we want every one of those birds within that flock to produce the same product. That's how we commercialize and mechanize, essentially, producing our commercial birds. And so it's been through genetic selection that we're able to do this and get the same results every time. Now, one of the urban myths and legends we have about poultry is that the commercial industry has used hormones to develop the bird. And it's not true at all. It's simply genetic selection. Federal regulations have always prohibited the use of hormones. They wouldn't work anyway. And it's only through genetic selection where we've gone from this 1957 meat bird fed at the same feed for the same amount of time in our modern strain, and this is where we get our modern bird then, and that's through genetic selection. It's no different than if we were looking at a dog. We would all agree that a Great Dane is a dog and a Chihuahua is a dog. And how do we get there? How do we get there from their common ancestry back in the day, essentially being the wolf? Well, we did that through genetic selection. Selecting traits over the years, over the decades, centuries that we were looking for. No, it's no different from the modern meat chicken as the dog. Essentially, we've selected for traits that we're interested in. So other things, these aren't breeds, but they're certainly very important. These are the sex links, and these are crossbred birds that they're very good layers. They're available. They're very commonly available from mail order hatcheries, and some of the common ones are the black sex links, or the black stars, the red stars, or the golden comets. And people like them not only because they lay a lot of eggs. They're a pretty calm bird, but the other thing too is you can tell if they're a male or a female from day one, from the day they hatch. And for some areas where you're not allowed to have roosters, that's going to be an important component as well. So for example, here, these are this is a flock of golden comets on the right. And in the middle here, you have the day-old chicks. The yellow one is a male, and the orange russet one is a female. And you can see they maintain that color throughout their into adulthood. The birds on the left, those are black stars. And as day-old chicks, the males will have a little white dot on top of their heads when they're hatched. The females will not. So again, you can tell what sex they are from day one. And here are just some examples. Here's the black stars, Rhode Island Reds, cross with the barred rock, and there's a gold sex link, a cinnamon queen. There's a few out there as well that have kind of the same characteristics that people are looking for that. We also have some other popular hybrids, and these are the green and blue eggers that you can buy through mail order hatcheries or for local people. The olive egger, for example, the cuckoo blue bar. Both the olive egger will kind of lay those olive colored eggs, and the blue bar will lay the pale blue eggs that you can again, you can get these types of birds from mail order hatcheries and local stocks as well. But what if we got a little bit crazy? And this isn't a pure cross. I'm just kind of showing you again what genetic selection can do. But if we were to take some bloodline from a naked neck, and this is an actual European breed, the naked neck, and we were to cross it with a silky, what might we get? Well, we'll get a variety of things, actually. We'll get 4 types of chicken that come out of that breed, that cross. We'll get a standard looking kind of naked neck. We'll get a dark black, a black skin naked neck. We'll get a featherless bird. That's because the feather gene is a recessive gene, and so as we make these crosses, we essentially have shut off those feather genes, and so sometimes we can go a little too far. This is actually a bird that I had hatched from. These are birds I had that hatched from eggs that had bloodlines from some of those crosses. Now the 4th bird, I told you there's always 4 when you make that initial cross. It didn't survive incubation because it is a fatal cross. In other words, it's gone to where they can't survive essentially beyond embryo stage, and so that's an issue there with those featherless birds. We've had some companies that thought they would try this route, go this route to produce featherless chickens, but it really has not worked well. Chicken skin's very thin, and who knew they also get sunburned? So really hasn't worked too well. So when you want to select chickens for your small flock, first thing you need to decide is, what do you want them for? You want eggs, meat, pleasure, ornamental? What do you want? Got to consider your geography. The bigger birds, the big heavy Brahmas and Cochins sometimes do better in colder climates because they have a lot more feathers on them. May not do so well in hotter climates. What kind of space do you have, and where is it? Some of these breeds do not do well in tight confinement. They're more hyperactive birds. A good example would be the white leghorn. They get pretty hyperactive in tight confinement, and so you want to select something that has its temperament's a little bit more calmer, particularly if you're going to be in an urban environment where you have some restrictions on covenants and things such as that might play a role there. Do you want some meat? And if that's the case, you'd want to look towards some of the meat birds, the Cornish crosses, and some of those that are available. Are you looking for egg size? Are you looking for a volume of eggs in order to sell to the community or sell at farmers markets? Or do you just interested in a spectrum of color? And certainly we can do that. just by selecting different breeds. Here's the examples down here. The Marin, which is actually an American breed. There's that well summer I was telling you about. All the way down the line, different breeds lay different eggs, different color of eggs, and those can be selected for. So my overall ranking of backyard flocks, those that have scored the best for temperament, temperature tolerance, egg production, meat utility, these are the 6 that I'm kind of looking at here. The Rhode Island Red, Plymouth Rock, New Hampshire, all American breeds, the Sussex and the Australorp, the English breeds, and then those sex links are also great backyard flock birds. You'll notice that all these birds are what we would call dual purpose. They lay a good number of eggs, but they also have a little bit of meat quality to them, and they're all brown egg layers. And so that's making those selections then based on some of these characteristics that you're looking for. There's quite a palette of birds that you can select from when you decide to look at the type of bird that you want in a small flock scenario. All right, let's go into some biosecurity, because this is really important, not only currently, but just always in general. I know you've all heard of the avian flu. That's been an issue. It began in 2015. That was the first time ever that a highly pathogenic avian flu viral strain was here in the United States, first time. And we kind of had it kind of died out in the end of 2016, early 17, and then it popped up again. A different strain this time, a virus popped up again in 2000. And so I know you've heard about it, and certainly it is very infectious. It is very deadly for birds, particularly poultry. But what we found, I'm actually getting my head a little bit, it's affecting other animals as well. But it is considered a foreign animal disease because we've never really had it before. It's not historically been here. And there are some scenarios we've never had it here in the United States, but there are scenarios where certain strains of this virus can jump from birds to humans, and but that has never happened here. The strains have never been here, and that's more in some of the developing countries where people and their animals essentially live together in impoverished scenarios. But the potential is there for this certainly to jump from wild birds into our backyard flocks and into our commercial industry. And that for us would be a very bad thing, particularly in Georgia. If you didn't know, Georgia's #1 in the country for meat bird production. We raise more meat chickens here in Georgia than anywhere else in the country, about 1.4 billion birds every year. And it would be a tremendous blow to our industry if we're to get into our if this avian flu were to get into our commercial industry. Well, where does it come from? Well, it comes from waterfowl. There are the reservoirs for the virus, and most times the virus, highly pathogenic avian flu virus, doesn't affect the waterfowl. They just contract it, and then they're carriers for it. And so, and then as they migrate in the spring and in the fall, they're dragging this virus across the United States. And so what I've showed here is the flyways, the waterfowl flyways that we have. And the two that are important for us here in Georgia are the Mississippi flyway and the Atlantic flyway. But if you will look, and this is just a kind of an overview, but if you'll look, Georgia, other than the coast, we're kind of in between two flyways, and that's good for us. Yeah, meaning that while there's still a chance that we can get virus in our birds, it looks like there's really a lower chance because we're not directly underneath some of these big flyways like the central US is, where they have the Mississippi and Central Flyway, where millions and millions and millions of waterfowl are traversing over that part of the country twice a year or many times throughout the year. The change this time has been that waterfowl are affected by this virus. We're seeing duck and goose mortality along the coast. Vultures, you heard about the vultures in Georgia. That's Georgia's claim to fame, I guess, if you want to call it, for this particular strains. We've lost a lot of vultures because of it. Eagles, mammals, all have been affected by this particular strain of this virus. And so we've got a lot of information out about being careful. You know, if you have vultures or you see dead birds on your property, to notify the Department of Ag, and they'll help with identifying what's going on. This is kind of showing the map of confirmed cases that we've had in Georgia and some presumptive, some suspect cases, but almost all of these have been associated with wild birds, some waterfowl along the coast, and then vultures. And I mentioned mammals this time, where they seem to be picking up the virus, and for some reason. And it's not that they are dying from it. It's they kind of become carriers, as some of the waterfowl have. And so, again, it's kind of a new world for poultry in general, that we have this virus potential to be within, to jump into our birds. If you're interested in tracking the virus and the confirmed cases throughout the country, you can go to this APHIS webpage, or you can just Google APHIS, APHIS, and avian flu, and it'll pop you into this webpage where they're tracking all the cases, confirmed cases. I pulled this from the backyard flock, and again, you can see where a lot of the backyard flocks have been confirmed, particularly in the upper Midwest and in the Northeast. A number of birds have had to be put down. If birds test positive, the flock has to go down in order to try and stop this spread of this virus. We have a lot of information on our UGA webpage we created for this. Just Google UGA avian flu, and it'll pull you into this webpage. We have information. We have this print program or a flyer that can be printed off. We have federal, state, industry information and links, symptoms to watch for. There's a section on frequently asked questions that we get, about 4 pages of questions. Oftentimes people just want to know what it is and if it's has any impact on meat or eggs that they buy in the store. And so this answers some of those questions for that. We also have some resources for county agents to use in helping people to determine if some of the problems that they're having in their flock might be associated with avian flu. The Georgia Poultry Lab Network, because of the industry, we have a lab that's dedicated to helping the industry, but they also help small flock owners. They have a webpage and they have a hotline that can be called. Also, the Department of Ag, Georgia Department of Ag, there's information, there is links that you can use to further your information or learn more about avian influenza. Blanket statement: products are safe. Products that you buy in the store have been tested, have been verified. They do not come from flocks that are positive for avian flu. And even if there were some virus in there, cooking it properly, it destroys the virus. And so there's no issue with buying eggs and meat from the stores. You can know that it's safe to eat. As I mentioned, direct contact is very, there's really no threat, not with the strain that we have. But the CDC will tell you, and it's not from avian influenza, but from salmonella, maybe some other things. We probably shouldn't be kissing our chickens, but it's a good practice to be mindful of some of the cross contamination that can occur. So let's talk about, in the last little bit that we have here, about some practical steps that you can take for small flocks. And I show you this slide just to highlight a couple of things that we want to look at. We want to isolate our birds, and we want to control the traffic. In other words, let's keep viruses from getting into our birds, and then on the reverse side, we don't want anything coming from our birds that could go into somebody else's birds. And so biosecurity is the term that we use to create safety guards within our flock to eliminate the chance, or to minimize the chance of having diseases entering the flock. And then the third step rather is sanitation. This becomes very important too. Well, let me back up a little bit. We want to wild birds, especially waterfowl, we want to make sure that they don't have access to our flocks. Pest control is important. Quarantining new birds, if you're bringing them to an existing flock, just know that doesn't guarantee they don't have a virus that could come in. But then the traffic control, avoiding visiting flocks that might be suspect, and that might potentially spread disease to your flock. But then sanitation becomes really important. And if you don't remember anything I tell you today, other than this one thing, probably one of the most important things you can do is have a dedicated pair of shoes that you use just for your chickens. These are the pair of shoes or pair of boots that I use when I go check on my chickens, or go feed them, or go collect eggs, or whatever it is. Have some dedicated shoes. Otherwise, let's do something to clean them as best we can. And it might be, Lorenzo mentioned a few things and has a few things in his kits, but having a foot bath is good. If you have a pair of boots, and dip them in that foot bath, and make sure that it covers your feet where you might have something from the yard or from somewhere else. You want to use some kind of material that will stand up well to dirt, to manure getting into it. And so chlorine is not a good product because it's quickly inactivated, but a product like some pine oil-based product, Pine Sol, or some of these other different brand names, those are good. They stand up better in a kind of a dirty scenario there. But making sure that they're minimizing pests is important as well, particularly rats and mice. They're going to be, they carry a lot of different things, or can potentially. Wild birds as well, they can be bringing in avian flu virus with them potentially. So making sure that we do everything we can to control pests in and around our chicken coops is going to be important. I use the phrase clean up and bait down, meaning let's make sure that our area doesn't encourage rodents because they can hide, or they can easily travel because they're undercover, either through trash or through vegetation or something like that. Clean up around your coops, and then bait. You can use some baits, rat poisons or things like that, traps to get rid of any that might try and establish within your coop area. So let's minimize wild bird contact. Let's minimize visitors with other birds. Let's stay clean and disinfect as regularly as best we can. A good example picture down there, feeding chickens in a mud bath. Man, that's, there's all kinds of potential there for disease transmission, and particularly with some staph infections and things like that. Confinement rearing is preferred. If you free range your birds, just know that there is a heightened risk of them contracting a virus or some kind of illness because they have greater access to the outdoors or to wild birds. And then the one on the bottom, I say practice an all in, all out management, kind of meaning that if you have a flock of birds and let's say they're egg layers and they're for your family, well, they every year that they lay eggs, they're going to lay fewer eggs. And so at some point you have to swap them out for more birds. And so my recommendation is that you swap them all out at once. And whenever you have old birds and mix them with new birds or young birds, there's always an increased chance of the old birds passing something on to the young birds that they have not been exposed to. These are again in part from the federal program that was mentioned before. We kind of want to avoid mixing those age groups, as I mentioned. Sometimes mixing species, particularly if you include waterfowl into your flock, just know that there is kind of a cascade effect of potential transmission from waterfowl that may have access to wild or congregate with other wild waterfowl. It'll pass on through the flock. Neither a borrower nor lender bee, let's be careful sharing equipment that might track different viruses or bacteria from one place to the other. And then introduce new birds with caution and isolating them for at least 3 to 4 weeks. And you want to do that just in case they've been exposed to something and haven't shown symptoms yet. If they start showing symptoms and become sick, then at least they've been isolated. The risk is still there that they have, once you've obtained the birds, they've already survived some disease, particularly a virus that they now can pass on to your existing flock who may not have been exposed. And a good example of that, I had a call some years ago from a fellow. He had a flock of about 400 birds that he had a small egg laying business, and he was losing 10 to 15 birds every day. And he knew he had some kind of virus. He just couldn't figure out what had happened. And come to find out, he'd gone to a flea market, and he said what he saw was just the most beautiful pair of pullets he'd ever seen, and he just had to buy them. He did, and he quarantined them just as he should have, and then he introduced them to his flock. Well, they had survived a virus infection that his flock had not been exposed to. And so even though he quarantined, he dragged a virus into his existing flock by purchasing new birds. So you got to be careful. We talked about the foot baths, those phenols or quaternary ammonias. Those are the type of products that you want to put in there. And I like them just because it helps maintain that biosecurity mindset. If you step into them every time, it helps. It's a constant reminder that you need to be careful with tracking anything into your birds. Just a couple of diseases to know. At least how much time do you want me to take left?
You've got about 6 minutes to get you to 1 o'clock, and then probably 10 minutes, a few minutes past for questions and answers.
Okay. All right. Well, just a couple of viruses to know because they're very important for small flock birds. The first is Marek's disease, and it can become very common, and yet it's very preventable with a vaccination. Marek's virus is everywhere in the world. You got to just think it's everywhere. And what it is it's a tumor causing virus. And it impacts primarily the nervous system. And, so it's going to start showing up in your older birds. And the result is paralysis and head tremors and other neurological problems. It's preventable with a vaccine. It's not curable. Once they start showing symptoms, you're stuck with it. And you either need to get rid of the birds or humanely euthanize them, that type of thing. They will never recover once they start showing those symptoms. And so vaccinating your chicks, or requesting a vaccination when you buy chicks from a hatchery, very important, and that will prevent them from developing symptoms. It won't stop necessarily an infection, but they won't get in the symptoms from that virus. So very important that you do that. Another viral disease is fowlpox. This is common in small flocks. It's spread by essentially by mosquitoes, and it ends up being a blister kind of scenario where you have these lesions. They develop scabs. It really doesn't kill birds per se. It can impact their egg performance, egg production before they recover from it. But viruses, or vaccines rather, are available. You'd have to order them, and they typically will come in very large quantity, but they've been designed for the commercial industry. But that's a possibility if you have an interest in that. And the way we kind of prevent some of these viral disease problems, avian influenza being one, is making sure that we purchase our birds from a hatchery that's participating in what we call the National Poultry Improvement Program. Buying birds that kind of guarantees that those bloodlines, those stocks of birds, do not have. They've had all the preventative measures for these particular viruses, minimizing that wild bird contact, introducing new birds, minimizing visitors. All will help to minimize viral spread, particularly during times when we have a lot of concern for that. Let's just kind of jump ahead a little bit. Bacterial infections, they can occur. They often occur. Viruses will often come into, and we're no different. A virus will get a cold virus, and we get sick. And then we end up with a sinus infection. Well, that's not the virus. That's a bacteria now that's causing that infection. Same with chickens. A virus comes in, drops their immunity, and then a bacteria comes in behind and causes the infection. And so that's oftentimes what we have to deal with. Another interesting one is yolk peritonitis. And this is, we often seen in small flocks where, the symptoms, you can tell they don't feel good. They're not laying eggs. They're not eating. They're starting to lose their condition. And what happens is they're essentially become internal layers. They're laying eggs, but the eggs are not going through the reproductive tract normally. They're dropping into the abdominal cavity of the bird. And, financially, it's not, it's hard to spend the money to have it treated or have it operated on. Certainly it can be done, but I don't think this is something that can be corrected, but you can reduce the chance of this by making sure that the birds are fed well, that there's good management, that your coops are clean, and all the equipment and things are in the right place that they need to be productive, and that'll help reduce the chance of that yolk peritonitis from occurring. Biosecurity is another slide. Biosecurity, ventilation, good clean water, maintaining proper nutrition, all are going to be important to minimize this kind of a issue with some of our bigger bodied dual purpose birds that we have. Okay. Moldy feed. You'll make sure your feed's nice and clean. If it's moldy, it can have what we call mycotoxins. These are toxins that actually very, very potent toxins that can cause lesions or even death within the bird. So making sure your feed's nice and clean and fresh. Other issues, roundworms, gape worms, backyard flocks that are free ranging can certainly pick up this kind of a problem. Bumblefoot, that's an infection, a staph infection at the ball of the foot. Can be kind of hard to treat. You have to make sure all that infection gets out there, and then you have to use typically a topical antibiotic to try and treat that. And then coccidia, a very common parasite that they are going to pick up if they're free ranging. We even have trouble inside commercial chicken houses with it. And so it's a parasite that can cause intestinal problems. So sometimes we need medicated feed for that. I've gotten a lot of calls over the last couple of years about worms and about external parasites, how to treat for them. We really don't have a lot of drugs left to us that we can use to treat them outside of a prescription from a veterinarian. And even then, sometimes the drugs are not specifically designed for chickens. But piperazine is frequently used. You always need to make sure they have to be treated twice. Changing your bedding and sanitation all are going to be important. For those exterior parasites such as lice and mites, permethrin sprays are frequently used or available. There's also it's been around a while now, but it's called spinosad. And this is a microbially derived insecticide that's been very effective, part of a rotation program to treat them for external parasites. Dust bathing is good. It's chickens by nature going to dust bathe, and they're doing that for external parasites as well. It's not a guarantee that you won't have them, but if you have a nice dust bath, if you include something like wood ash, sand, and maybe some diatomaceous earth, something like that will help that they can and make a good dust bath for them. And then certainly regular coop cleaning is going to be important. Pest control, predator control, all are going to be important to not only save your chickens, but keep them from bringing something into your flock as well. Even raptors can be a problem. This is a pasture-raised poultry operation in South Georgia, and they have trouble with bald eagles coming in and eating all their chickens. I think this might be my last slide from biosecurity standpoint. No preventative step is too small. Everything that we can do to help prevent our birds from contracting the illness is going to be important. And everything that we do doesn't have to be expensive or painful or whatever to make sure our birds are safe, but making sure that we have the biosecurity mindset to protect our birds then is going to be really important as we go forward with developing a new flock or introducing new birds into a new flock or whatever it might be. Making sure that biosecurity is an important component of that management practices that we have is really very important. So I think that's what I have. Let's open it up for some questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Ritz. So if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them in the chat box and I will read them out. We're a few minutes past 1 o'clock, so hopefully y'all can stay if you have questions, and we'll definitely get them answered. If you have to drop off, that's fine. I did put in there that we recorded this, and I will record to the end, so you can always pick that up at the Metro Master Gardener YouTube channel, where this will show up probably later today. All right, does anybody have any questions? So there is one question. I noticed you did not include Buff Orpington for the backyard flock. Why not?
Buff Orpington's fine too. I mean, they're They're an English breed. They're right in line with the Australorp and the Sussex. They would be fine as well.
Okay.
I had to cut my list down to manageable, and so that one didn't make my. But nothing wrong with the Buff Orpington for sure.
Okay. If a large amount of chickens have to be euthanized, how are they typically disposed?
Are you talking about a small flock scenario? I guess
Either way, I guess.
yeah.
Yes, small flocks.
Yeah. Well, let's say they're confirmed to be positive, and so that would mean then the state of Georgia would become involved, and they would bring out a CO2 gas system that would then put down the birds using the CO2 gas.
Okay. So in other words, the state takes care of it. You don't have to do that.
That's correct.
And then they remove the birds and
Yes.
incinerate them, I guess, or whatever. Okay. So I know it's smart to swap birds out in one batch, so you don't have a large number of, different aged birds, for biosecurity purposes. This is from me. So, obviously we deal with a lot of folks that think that their birds are their pets and they like a few babies every here and there. It's difficult to kind of, I guess, quantify why it's important. What would be the easiest thing for me if I have somebody calling me up saying that their little flock of 10 chickens where they get a couple chicks a year and add to that, and it's their family. How do you reckon that? That's difficult.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, people do it, and it can be done, no doubt. Everybody just needs to realize that anytime they add to a flock, there's a risk, either to the existing flock because of the source of the chicks or the other birds, or to the birds that they're now introducing, and then they get something from the existing flock. There's always going to be a heightened risk whenever you introduce a different age group into a flock, whether they're named or not. The risk is going to be there, and so but it happens every day, and many people are successful in doing that because they don't have a issue with disease in their flock, but the risk is always going to be there.
Okay. Another
Lisa.
question for me would, so sometimes people will get birds that are raised, that are basically just backyard chicks. And then sometimes they'll go to Tractor Supply and they'll get chicks that come from a hatchery that are vaccinated. Can it, and I already know the answer, but this is for everybody else. Does it make sense to stick with one or the other with regards to keeping disease out of your flock?
Well, I get really the answer is yes. Single source is always going to be best versus mixing two different sources of birds. Vaccinated birds are always going to be preferable. Vaccinated chicks rather. Yeah, and particularly for that Marek's virus, if you buy chicks from Tractor Supply, even they need to you need to make sure that they've been vaccinated for Marek's as well before purchasing them. And I think that should be an important component for anyone who sells chicks, is that they have at least a minimum of that vaccination. But the vaccine doesn't guarantee that they won't get an infection. It just, they won't develop the symptoms, the neurological symptoms and problems associated with that. So again, it's mixing sources is always, or having a single source is always going to be preferred over multiple sources of birds.
Okay. Another question, if the vendor does not vaccinate day-old chicks, would feeding medicated feed suffice? And then a secondary, I believe Tractor Supply doesn't sell vaccinated chicks. So can you confirm or deny the second part?
About Tractor Supply, I don't know. I can't confirm or deny that they vaccinate. It probably depends on their source that they get. What was the first part of your question? Of the question?
It says if the vendor doesn't vaccinate day-old chicks, would feeding them medicated feed work?
Yeah, no. The vaccination is specifically for viral diseases. The medicated feed typically is going to be for, it'll have an anti-coccidial component to it, so that helps to get rid of that coccidia parasite, or keep it at bay rather. And then if there's an antibiotic, some kind of antibiotic within the medicated feed, then that could help with any bacterial issues, but it will not do anything to any viral infections.
How long should chicks typically be on medicated feed?
Good question. Probably, I would say, I'm throwing it out there based on experience from some of the meat birds. The meat birds typically are only on medicated feed for about 3 weeks, but you know, as soon as you take them off a medicated feed, they are going to get coccidia, for example. They are going to get the coccidia infection. That's just the nature of the environment that our birds are going to be in. So keeping on that medicated feed for as long as you can is going to be important. If you have layer birds, once they start laying, you'll take them off that medicated feed, and then feed them a layer ration that is not going to have any medication in it, so that you can consume the eggs that are produced there.
Is there a withholding? Like,
depends on what might be in the feed, and the label will list any withdrawal period that has to be there for any given medication.
okay. Another question, if you decide to raise chicks in your flock and want to vaccinate them, would you get that from, say, Tractor Supply, or do they need to involve a vet, or do they need to somehow source it through the state?
Yeah, good question on that one. There's a couple companies that produce vaccine that you can go online and buy. Zoetis is one of them, spelled Zoetis. They make vaccines for the commercial industry, and you can buy a vial of vaccine. Let's say foulpox. You can buy a vial of it. I believe it comes in 10,000 dose vials, and you may only need a couple doses, but you still have to buy that 10,000 dose vial, because that's who their main consumer of that product is. It's generally not very expensive. You just have to sometimes buy more than you need to get to vaccinate your flock. So you can, for some of these vaccines, you can order them online. I think Merrick's is also available if you want to do Merrick's, Foulpox. Those are the two main ones I think are going to be most important for backyard flocks.
Okay, and I put that website into the chat box if anybody is interested. It's available there. Last question so far. I've heard medical professionals say that pasture-raised chickens are better and healthier. How do we balance confined raised with pasture or free-range raised chickens?
Well, that's part of my urban myths and legends series. If you look at the egg nutrition, let's just take egg nutrition. The egg nutrition from a pasture raised bird is no different from a bird that's been confined in a cage. The nutritional value of the egg does not change. And I'm going to put a period there, period. You're going to get each large egg is going to be 70 calories, 185 milligrams of cholesterol, 6 grams of protein, and 5 grams of fat. That is a chicken egg. And no matter if it's a heritage breed or a pastured or a free range or a cage free or a vegetarian fed, the egg is going to have the same nutrition. And the difference would be maybe is in the minds of some would be the health and welfare of the bird itself, but it's not going to impact at all the nutritional value of eggs that come from those birds because they're chickens. A chicken is a chicken is a chicken, really, or an egg is an egg is an egg. If it's from a chicken, it's going to have that set nutritional value. And so that kind of, I think that kind of answers that. I mean, if you're looking for, again, for maybe some perceptions on the health and welfare of the hen, we can talk about that. But from the egg standpoint, there's no difference.
Okay. All right. I don't see anything else. Any last minute questions if anybody has any? Otherwise, I think we'll probably wrap it up. We're a little past quarter after. Last call. Don't see anything. Okay. So I've put some information here in the chat box and I'll put mine here. If anybody has any questions about this presentation, and you can always reach out to me if you have some other questions that popped up after this, and I can get Dr. Ritz to answer those for you. So other than that, thank you so much, Dr. Ritz, for coming and talking about all this good stuff. There's always so many different things and there's just not enough time to talk about it all. Thank you, Lorenzo, for coming and talking about your community farm. And there's information in the chat box about his cooling water community farms and the website, and you can check him out. And if anybody is interested in one of those biosecurity kits, again, his info is in the chat box. Grab that now and you can reach out to him via his website or email him directly. And I'm sure he will make sure you get that kit. Since of course, we all love our chickens. That's probably why we're here. And although I do see a couple master gardeners on here who are probably here for CE, but that's okay. So thank you very much for taking your time to come here and watch this wonderful presentation. And I hope you all have a really good rest of your afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.
Bye now.